because really, for me, it's all about helping that veteran achieve whatever he's looking to achieve. It doesn't have to be buying a home. It could be federal disability retirement. It could be, clothing allowance. It could be getting a service dog. It doesn't matter what it is. The one thing I kind of realized, life is full of regret. When you get older, you kind of regret a lot of things. But talking to most of these guys and gals, the things they regretted are not the things they did.
Yeah.
It's the things they didn't do. There's no other sport closer to life than wrestling. I mean, life, you're out there by yourself. You know that. You can't blame the quarterback. You can't blame somebody from doing this. It's just you and your opponent out there. And what these kids don't know, their biggest opponent is them.
Yeah.
Their mindset is their biggest opponent. Kid in front of you is just the kid in front of you. If you believe you're going to win, if you believe you're going to lose, you're probably right.
Okay, so here we are, another episode of Rate of Success. I am super excited to have with me Donnie Fields. Donnie is someone that I've met over the last couple years. We work out at the same gym in the morning. We see each other when we're not being lazy and actually going to the gym. But I'm excited to have Donnie on because Donnie is a veteran. He does a lot with veteran organizations, and we've run into each other at some of these organizations, and it was really important to me to have a veteran on to kind of talk through VA loans. So Donnie, why don't you introduce yourself and just a little bit about how long you've been in the business?
All right. Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. I'm pretty excited to be here today, as we just discussed.
Yeah.
But what was the question? How did I get into business?
Yeah. How long have you been in the business?
Okay. I've been in the business since 2022. So 3 going on 4 years at this point.
So we always say, and I know you have a military background, but we always say nobody goes to college or goes in the military and says, when I get done with my military service, I'm going to become a realtor. So we all end up here by accident. Nobody plans to be in the real estate industry. So what was that path kind of to get you here?
Well, I guess COVID happened. I used to work at the VA hospital here in Hines, Illinois, the chief of prosthetics. And, when COVID happened, that was a scary time for us. We had doctors that were literally not going home and seeing their family through glass doors.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, I have 2 young kids. I was going home every day. I'm seeing these same patients that they were seeing. And it was a scary time. So at that time, I had a friend that was in real estate, Justin Pillion. And, I was talking to him about what he was doing because I wanted to be an investor. And, he let me know I was kind of scared to make that move. I was making pretty good money at the VA. And he was like, "You're going to let the X amount stop you from making $1 million?" And, next question was like, "You make $1 million?"
Yeah.
But when COVID happened, that was an opportunity presented itself. So I put in for my retirement, and I was able to grant that. And like I said, I sat at home, and my wife gave me a big, long list to do.
Yeah.
And I was like, I got to get out and do something. And then I started looking for investments. And through that, I just, started helping veterans, achieve wealth through real estate.
Yeah. So obviously you're passionate about veterans, but wonder if we talk a little bit about how, so did you go to the military right out of college, high school?
High school.
Okay.
I wasn't even done with high school when I signed up.
Okay.
I had my older brother. He was moved from Panama. He was talking to a recruiter. My dad was 23 years military, so his father was military. So
So you grew up in military family.
Grew up on bases across the globe, and I guess I was you're 17. You kind of make silly mistakes, and I made a silly mistake one night, and my father found out about it, and he kind of woke me up that morning. He was like, "Sign this paper, or get out of my house," and. There was a recruiter standing right next to him. I asked him if I can go back to bed. He said yes.
Yeah.
So I signed a paper and I joined the Army when I was 17 years old.
Wow. So what was that experience like going, from 17, being in the military? What do you take away from that time that you use every day today?
Well, for me, I grew up in a military household. So my father ran that house like a drill sergeant. All my brothers and sisters can vouch for that.
Yeah. So
it wasn't hard for me. I always realized there was structure and there was always somebody, that had control of me.
Yeah.
And I love the military. I love the camaraderie. So to me, it was my second home.
And let's talk a little bit about your military career because you were Army Ranger, correct?
Yes.
So what was that like becoming an Army Ranger? Because not everyone becomes an Army Ranger. So what was that path to get there like?
Well, my father got injured in Vietnam, so he actually ran the Stars and Stripes clubs after he got injured, mind you. He was Special Forces. But after that, he was the last club manager that the Army had. So I thought I was going to be a cook. Actually, I signed up at MEPS to be a cook. And then we went to MEPS and I did my 2-mile run. And I think I ran it like in like 9 minutes.
Wow.
Like the guy behind me was like literally 5 minutes behind me. And at that point, they just offered me a Ranger contract. It was all these bonuses. I figured I could buy a new truck. So I called my dad. They're like, hey, they're offering me a Ranger contract. Should I take it? And, that was probably his proudest moment. It was probably his toughest child when it come, to discipline, if you will. So he loved it. And that's kind of how I did it, man. Just being a good runner.
So that same passion that you had being in the military that allows you, because again, you're very modest about it. Like, oh, I ran this mile, but like, where did that all come from? Your dad, that passion and kind of drive?
Yes. Well, from my mother too. My mother always used to say, you only have your name, son. So make sure, when people speak it, they speak good about it. But my dad, it was the disciplinary in him. Like I said, he ran that house with an iron fist. I didn't know I wanted to be a Ranger. It just kind of happened. But once you got in there, everybody in a Ranger battalion, they're all under probably 25 years old. So that's where I met my brothers. I still talk to these guys to this day, and I feel like they're my brothers, even if I haven't seen them for 20 years. I guess.
So you have your military career. So what was it like? How long were you in the military then?
I was in the military 8 years.
8 years. So then, obviously, a big transition coming out of the military. What was that like? And is that when you went directly to the VA?
Correct.
Okay, so that was a big transition. What was that transition like?
Well, I would have made it a career, but unfortunately I got injured at a routine jump on Fort Benning, Georgia, now Fort Moore. I believe that's what it's called now. I jumped out of an airplane, and I had we call them a May West in the military community, where my riser was inverted over my main deploy. So I was just coming in faster than I knew, and I was a mortar man, so I had about 100 pounds of equipment here. And so when I see the tree tops, I realize, the standard was count 4 seconds, lower your rucksack. So by the time I was on 3, I was already on the ground and literally broke both my hips. And after that, I was done, doing what I wanted to do. They wanted to keep me in the Army, but I joined to be a Ranger. So, I got discharged and then was recruited by the VA Central Office to become a chief of prosthetics through the Hines VA. Well, not through the Hines VA, just through VA Central Office. And after that, I traveled the world. They were looking for disabled vets to run their services.
Yeah. What did you learn being in, working with disabled vets? Because obviously that's a very noble thing to do. And obviously during that time, you meet a lot of great people.
Yes.
Going through probably one of the most difficult times of their lives. So is there anything that you take away from that time that that you learned a lot from?
Yeah, kind of, talking to some of these older veterans, the one thing I kind of realized, life is full of regret. When you get older, you kind of regret a lot of things. But talking to most of these guys and gals, the things they regretted are not the things they did.
Yeah.
It's the things they didn't do.
Yeah.
So, I kind of live my life by that motto, don't be afraid to do it, give it a shot, which is why I'm here. This is definitely a stressful thing, but, just don't be
if you
afraid
can
to do
jump
the things.
out of a plane with 100 pounds, you could do a podcast.
Well, I couldn't do that now. I'm afraid to look out windows now.
This is scary. Like I'd rather do this than jump out of a plane. So
I went to the 360 tower. I couldn't even get close to those windows these days. So
yeah. So so then you find yourself in real estate. Okay, 2022 was an interesting time to get into real estate because we were on the tail end of all the craziness.
Yes.
Okay, there was it's probably the highest agent count that we had and probably will have for quite some time. So you're coming into a very crowded time because there's a lot of people entering the industry. Okay, mortgage rates were low. Okay,
office was full.
Yep, exactly. Like it was. I don't want to say the job was easy, but it was easier than what it is today. Okay, and so you get in then. And what was the transition like the next couple of years? Because obviously it was totally different, and I almost say like you probably got in at the perfect time if you look back on it, because you got to experience a little bit of the craziness, but you're also building a business during a time when most people are just trying to survive.
Yes.
And I think, you're being who you are, it doesn't scare you to, I'm going to, start this initiative that I want to work on that we'll talk a little bit about, but you have this kind of, as long as I've known you've had this kind of like, and you probably don't realize it, but you have this kind of no fear kind of, I'm just going to do it. You always have a plan. Every time we talk, you always are telling me about something that you're working on or something that you're doing. Yeah. It's usually evolved around veterans. There's been some times where I've, been asked to help out at a local veteran organization. I show up and I see Donnie's there, so you're very active in that. When you kind of go through this and you start breaking it up and you go through 22, 23, what was that experience like, not knowing anything about the market and seeing rates go up, agents complaining probably about the market? Like, it had to be a difficult time to kind of navigate.
It was, like I said, when I first got into real estate, I wanted to be an investor, and I thought the best way to do that was get my license, go find my own deals. And that was a scary time because I'm looking at properties and, they were listed for $250, but like 3 years ago, they bought them for like $70.
Yeah.
So as an investor, I was real tentative. I'm talking to my people, my peers, and, they're always telling me, hey, next Tuesday, the market will crash. Next Tuesday, the market will crash.
Yeah.
So, I went through that in 2012 in Florida. So it was a scary time, but that's kind of how I involved just to start helping veterans buy homes, and I'm not gonna say it was easy, but it was easy. Rates were so low, and I didn't even know about rates back then, but 2% rates, I mean, it's free money at that point.
Yeah.
Cost of living was pretty low for most things, I guess, or at least the mortgages, what I'm trying to say. But it kind of came easy, but I never really quite focused on veterans. Everybody at the office was like, you have the veteran thing. You should focus on that niche. You should focus on that niche. And, you say I got a lot of plans, but I kind of gallivant through my day most of the times, and people at the office.
But I think that's what makes, like, I think there's certain people that just, like, you have ideas.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And that is the most important thing, because a lot of people don't have ideas and they're just trying to see what this person's doing and what this person's doing. And they're never really kind of, in your mind, you may think like, oh my God, I have all this, how do I execute it?
Yes.
But just the fact that you're thinking like that is very different than a lot of other people, because I relate to that a lot.
My wife calls that Donnie Land.
I like Donnie Land. So my wife would probably call it, Eric Land. Like I'm always like, I always have an idea, and she's always like, why don't you just finish one of them? Yeah. But that's what makes people successful, is you got to have that vision, and you got to get other people to buy into it to do that. And that's, what you've been doing all along. And it's never a perfect path straight there. It's always a little, you kind of get lost along the way at times. So what would you say your biggest, if you could go back to, Donnie in 2022 until now, is there anything that you would do differently, or was it you kind of learn along the way?
Well, I would like you said, I do have ideas. I have grand ideas. I always see the end product, but the steps to get there is the challenge, So I would just say surround yourself with people, that will complement you, that can help you execute that grand 5-year plan. Because I didn't do that the first few years. I just kind of did my own thing and never really quite accomplished what I was looking to do. Yeah. Because I wasn't surrounding myself with the right people. But at this point, I'm putting it all down on, the Veterans Home Collective thing that we're
so let's talk about. So you're starting an organization, Veteran Home Collective, okay? I'm assuming the goal is to help as many veterans build wealth through real estate. So that could be buying a primary residence, buying an investment property, but knowing and understanding not only their VA benefits, but the ability to build wealth through real estate. Is that in a nutshell?
Pretty much, absolutely. Okay. When I talk to these veterans, they don't understand their benefits. And even me, I didn't. I thought I had to, I thought it was a one-time benefit.
Exactly.
I get to use it one time.
It's actually one of the misconceptions that I always talk about, is that you can use it more than once. Yeah. And you can have more than one at the same time.
Well, and I wish I'd have known that when I moved here from Miami, because I sold my house in Miami for about $380, and today it's worth $700,000. Yeah. And, I just kind of kicked myself in the, because I did that, and that's what I'm just empower vets, educate veterans so they realize they can, pretty much use this VA benefit to create lifelong wealth and a legacy for their family.
So a lot of people, what I always said and what I've found, and I'm not a veteran, full disclosure, as you know, Donnie, but I've always been passionate about helping veterans. One of the things I've always found is that someone said something to me at my work. They said, everyone always says they want to help veterans. Yeah. But what are you doing to help veterans?
Yes.
And that's the difference. Like, people will say they support, and they, nobody's going to, but what are you actually doing each and every day to help veterans is, what they challenge us to really do. And it's why it's why we did the concert in the park. It's why I try to help out at organizations. It's why we focus a lot on VA loans. But as you've started helping veterans in this field, because obviously you've done it your whole life, being in the military, your previous job with the VA, but now being in real estate, what's been the biggest challenge in the real estate world trying to help veterans is, with being your goal of helping as many veterans?
Well, I help more veterans with their disability claims than I do even purchasing. I actually have a client right now who's trying to buy a house and he's 60% service connected. And I'm sure you know this, in the state of Illinois, 70% you're tax exempt. So that opens up a whole new housing
because you
for
can
him
qualify
at that
for
point.
significantly less.
So he's definitely, I just help the veteran in front of me at all times. Pretty much. Like I told him, it's probably not wise for you to buy a house right now because what he can afford right now is not what he's looking for. So I'm helping him with his disability claim right now. Hopefully in 30 to 60 days, we get him at least to 70, which, pretty much takes him from a 300 purchase to a 400 purchase.
Exactly,
And he has a few kids, so he needs multiple bedrooms or 4 bedrooms.
And just to elaborate on that, because I'm shocked at how many people don't know this, but when you're 70% disabled in the state of Illinois, you have no property taxes that are due, okay?
Correct.
And you can qualify for the loan without the taxes. So in some cases, to your point, you have a $800 or $900 a month tax bill, okay? You can completely remove that from the debt to income. And what we find is a lot of veterans that are on fixed income or, retired, that is a difference of sometimes becoming a homeowner and not becoming a homeowner, let alone purchase price can be significant. Now, I will say this, and I'll give a lot of credit to, for a while, there were a lot of lenders who would not use the, no tax to qualify. And thankfully, a lot of lenders are getting more lenient on that because there was interpretation of the, guidelines.
Well, before you had to be in that home for 1 year to get that homestead exemption, and now it's only 30 days.
Exactly. But even then, there were lenders who would qualify with no taxes. So it's becoming more customary, which is great because it's helping more veterans, and that obviously leads to our ability. So anything else about Vet Home Collective that you want to touch on that's kind of your experience so far in putting that together and kind of what you hope to get out of it, a year from now, 3, 4, 5 years from now?
Really, it's just to put as many veterans in homes that I can. It's educating them. There's not much out there, not too many people out there educating veterans, So that's the plan with Vet Home Collective, educate veterans on their disabilities, federal retirement claims. There's a lot of grants out there that veterans don't know about. 100% services connected with loss of use of, extremities. They have special adaptive housing grants. And these are grants that will modify your home to meet your disability. And if the home's already modified, they'll actually give you $70,000, $80,000 for the purchase of that home as long as it meets their requirements. But it's just to educate veterans and, hopefully, they start clicking the link and, we put them in houses and they leave something for their family.
What do you think is the biggest reason or struggle that veterans have kind of getting to the point? Because again, if 1 in 3 veterans don't even realize they qualify for a VA loan, okay, so that's problem number one, 100% financing, no PMI, lenders like us and others don't even charge lender fees. Like there's no better option that I have out of everything we have. And we have hundreds of programs than a VA loan. So where do you think the disconnect is with veterans to this day? Because you figure we have social media, you have people like you that are out there, promoting it. Where do you think the disconnect is of getting veterans to know their benefits?
Well, people just listen to their friends, and if their friends have the wrong info, they're going to get that info and keep sharing that info too. It's just they're not talking to the right people. They're not listening to the right folks, people like me and you. They're just listening to the people they run into at the American Legion, what have you. So for some of the older guys, until 1984, I think is when it was the first time you only can use it once. So they're just listening to people that just don't have the information anymore or the incorrect information.
And you use the word education, which I feel is, if you watch any of my videos or my podcasts, I use the word education all the time, okay? I feel like education is the biggest opportunity in our industry because the average first-time home buyer right now is 38, okay? Think about that. First-time home buyer, 38, was 28.
That's an old boy right there.
20, well, you're talking about wealth for veterans, okay? Think about a veteran that were to buy a home at 28 versus 38. And our market, I've been doing some numbers for clients, younger clients, because they're in their 20s. And if I could do it all over again, I would have bought way earlier than I did. And I've been doing these numbers, and sometimes it's like $100,000, $200,000 in equity in those 10 years, just using 4% annual appreciation, which is the average since 1940. And last year in Illinois, it was 7%. So getting veterans or getting any buyers the education to know and understand that that's what we're talking. We're not trying to sell homes. Like, I think that's what people think when they see a realtor, they think of a lender. They think, oh, well, they're trying to get, commissions, they get paid, but it's really wealth. Like when I talk to a client that calls me to, sell their house that bought it 10 years ago, we're never, talking about, oh God, I don't know if I should have bought this. They're like, I now have $200,000 in equity.
I wish I'd have bought 10 of these.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. So that is what I think from an education standpoint, the biggest opportunity. Do you feel like, because for veterans, they have 100% financing. Do you think it's just the fear of, the unknown?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then, so I know you started a YouTube page. Are you using that as the opportunity to kind of reach more veterans and start talking about, veteran opportunities and veteran programs and all these things that you're talking about? Do you also use it to tell any success stories about the people that you're helping?
Well, that's something we're going to add to it.
Yeah.
We just started it, mind you, but that's one thing. I want to interview these veterans because, for instance, one of the first guys I helped, he used to work for me at the Hines Hospital. He was so scared of buying a house. He was 30-something years old. Parents never owned a house. He was, parents were Mexican immigrants.
Yeah.
So he's never quite owned anything. He's rented it his whole life. And he was so petrified of buying this house. I don't know if I'm going to live there. I don't know if he just didn't know. And the day we went under contract, he actually called me and he was like, it's just too much stress, kill the deal. And, I was in the office and I just had a conversation. I was like, listen, you just went under contract. You got 5 days to make this decision up. Go to sleep. Go to sleep. And if you feel that way tomorrow, because I don't do it for the commission. I don't need the money. I do it, to help veterans, build that wealth that we just kind of talked about. But I did tell him that day, I was like, listen, if you don't want to do this, go to sleep. When we wake up tomorrow, we'll kill the deal. And then I hung up the phone and I had 3 agents behind me like, why would you tell him to do that? You don't want to do that. I'm like, this is my friend. If he doesn't feel comfortable, I don't want him to do this. But he woke up the next morning, he felt better. And he's actually my business partner now. And now he wants to buy as many houses as he can because he realized that he's probably made about $100,000 on that house in the last 3 years. And he's having the conversations like, I want more. He actually lived there for a year, maybe a year and a half. He moved his mother and his sister in because they've been paying rent their whole lives. Now they're paying his rent. And he's looking for more properties to buy using his VA.
And now his life is going to be changed forever. And you were a big part of that. But I think, education is one of those things where we talk about education. It's just people are fearful is what it is.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm going to live there forever.
I don't know if I'm going to live there. What happens if, the market crashes? What happens is, and just knowing, understand the data. I always try to make my decisions when I go through a client very data driven. I don't talk about emotions. One of the things I always say is to realtors when I start a presentation is, do you have a relevant opinion based on fact? Because a lot of people have opinions on the market. Yeah. Very few of them are based off of fact. They're what they feel like. I mean, look at a lot of the chat rooms that we all are in. It's like, it's doom and gloom half the time, okay? But then when someone puts a factual information, nobody responds. But when someone puts something doom and gloom, there's like 900 responses. It's how we've been. Look at YouTube. You can do a video about the market's going to crash 30%. It'll have 10 million views. You can do a great video about helping veterans, and we struggle to get views. Like, that's what people are drawn to. So when you can provide education and really give people the tools to feel more comfortable, it can be life-changing for these people. Life-changing. Because think about, they don't want to work till they're 70, 80 years old. They want to be able to retire young and do that. And you're providing that that benefit.
So when I first started in real estate, I was going to all these classes. I'm learning. I'm sitting in your classes, getting educated. Yeah. And then I'd go out there and talk to somebody, and they would have that conversation. Oh, the market's crashing next Tuesday, like very specific. I'm like, well, what do they know that I don't know?
Yeah.
But yeah, to your point, people tend to thrive off the doom and gloom. That's what kind of sticks. But
and that's kind of the narrative that's out there, and it's why it's so important, I think, for people like yourself to get out there with a different message. Who's a veteran that can help other veterans? Because no one's going to listen to, a veteran's never going to listen to anybody unless they trust and know them, and you provide that trust. And I think it's why it's so impactful. But one of the things we talked about before this, and I'm curious to kind of, the biggest thing that I struggle with is education, not only in veterans or first-time home buyers, first-time sellers, is when I have a veteran buyer, what that offer process looks like and how I have to now re-educate a listing agent or other people in the market. And I feel like as an industry, I'm wondering what your thoughts are and what we can do to get kind of the stigma and this thought process of what a VA loan is and what it is not. Yeah. I think I gave you the stats before this, but the last year, only 7% of VA loans were denied and conventional was 9%. Okay. So has a lower default rate. I mean, there's just anything about a VA loan. There's no minimum credit score. Any lender, would tell you, any underwriter would tell you as one of the most lenient underwriting parameters. But we always hear the same things over and over again. So what do you think as a fellow realtor, and lenders, because I hear it from lenders as well, what can we do as an industry to make sure that not only the consumer is educated, but people in our own industry are educated?
I would definitely say seminars, inviting other agents in there, just let them know this is a benefit they earned.
Yeah.
That's why they're able to get that zero down. Sorry about that. But I did have agents call me in the past, asking me to go conventional, or why is my guy not putting any money down? Does he not have the money? And I had to explain to him, no, he earned this. He earned this benefit.
Yeah.
And at some point I even broke it down, I showed him what a conventional loan would look like, and I showed him, what a VA would look, how much out of pocket, and I even asked that agent, I was like, if this was your client, which one would you tell him to take?
Yeah.
And she looked, seeing that he was saving over $150,000 on the VA side. She's like, well, I would take that one. I was like,
tell people
why
all
are
the
you
time,
calling me?
just because my client's not putting any money down doesn't mean they don't have it.
Yeah.
I always tell people that, because if you have the opportunity to do 100% financing at a discounted rate with no PMI, why would you not?
Why would you do it? Yeah. Well, that's why I say, if it was your client, what would you do? And they always point to this one, and I'm like, okay, well, that's why.
Yeah.
But it's just the education. I mean, everything comes down to education. People just hear the negative stuff, and even appraisals. What if it doesn't appraise? I had to tell them about Tidewater period and things like that.
Honestly, one of the more lenient ways to dispute an appraisal is through VA. And I have never, in my 20 years, I think I've had one VA appraisal, and I do quite a bit of VA business. And it was interesting. I was so worried when the appraisal came in. You get that anxiety because you've sold this borrower and you got to call the listing agent. I called the listing agent, and I'll never forget it. I was like, she's like, let me guess, the appraisal came in low. And I was like, yeah. And I didn't know what to say. She's like, I kind of knew it was going to, I already kind of prepared my seller, where we were listed too high. So we don't have the appraisal issues. Now, I can't speak for other lenders.
Yeah.
But we just don't. And then for me, I just feel like it goes back to what we stated a little bit ago. Everyone says they support veterans, okay? This is our opportunity as an industry to really help veterans and to show it and give them a fair shot, because I think that's the other challenge with Illinois right now, specifically. Florida, it's a little bit easier because there's way more inventory. But in Illinois, we're still 61% below where we are, so where we were in 2019. The challenge that creates is that all of our offers are multiple offers.
Yes.
And if you have, $100,000 conventional down payment and an FHA offer and a VA offer and then a 10% down conventional, it's hard to get that VA offer to be looked at the same way through the listing agent. But I think we got to change the narrative to make that VA offer the strongest offer, because to me, I could give you 20 reasons why that VA offer is probably the least risky out of all of those. And that's the mindset that we need to get to the community that I hope we can change as a community. But I think it's going to take a lot of work.
Yeah, 100%, and it's really educating one person at a time. So to your point, it just all comes down to education. I think people just have the wrong information. And, I've never had anyone, any house not appraise. So these things that people talk about, I don't see them, and I'm actively in the business, and it's just getting the education out there.
So, okay, so on that, Vet Home Collective. So I just want to go back to that real quick. So, you're going to get a network of other realtors across the country.
Correct.
Okay, and I know you worked on this a little bit during your recent trip to your sales conference. What's kind of the grand picture of that and how you envision it to work, where you can, obviously have you as the kind of the face of it, okay?
And my sister.
And your sister, yep, exactly, yep. So you and your sister, which is great, working with family. But like, how does that all kind of come together to where you can, are people going to find you through your YouTube page? Like, what are you going to have all these resources where they can find out all these things that they qualify for? Is that kind of like a one-stop shop where they're going to go to find these resources?
That is the idea. Just create something that supports veterans. We put the information out there. Hopefully they find us organically. We're not doing anything special, to create any buzz. But just find one veteran at a time. If they find us, they can watch channels, get educated, and they say people tend to work with people they know, like, and trust, and that's what we're looking to do, is just build that trust with them while they're sitting at home, get educated, no pressure. And if they want to move forward, they always have that call to action where you'll reach out to us. And then it doesn't matter where you are. We have a network of lenders. We have a network of realtors across the nation. And that's something me and my sister just did at our convention. We went out there with a goal to have 50 business cards from other veterans that serve the world, if you will. And we came back with 100, and now it's just to connect with them, interview their clients, and just let them know that we're everywhere.
Do you have a specific group within Keller Williams that is veteran, is there a name for that? Or?
Yes, KW Military.
Okay, KW Military. So is that goal as well, too, as far as KW Military, to continue to grow that? And, how's that come about and how's that done? Because I've seen a lot more of this recently, which I think is really, really good. Because I think as much as you individually all want to help veterans, collectively, your ability to have an impact is going to be much bigger.
Yeah. Well, we're looking to interview, realtors across the nation, if you will. So that's something we're building right now. And, tell us about North Carolina. Tell us what makes, San Francisco great. And then if people watch it, they know they can reach out to us and we can make that connection for them and pretty much get the ball rolling.
One of the things I noticed speaking with some of the organizations is like the biggest trouble is like if a veteran needs a resource and they go to Google and they Google it, most of the stuff that comes up is not the places that they want veterans to go. And it's trying to give them there's so many veteran resources, but there's only some that other veterans would endorse, where there's a lot of other ones who, they don't. So is this kind of a way for you to kind of help out veterans as well, to have kind of a one-stop shop to kind of come to you for things housing related or disability related?
Pretty much all things VA. I mean, with my experience, I was 30 years federal service, counting my military time and VA time. My sister is 20 years. We have all this knowledge, and really we just don't want to keep it to ourselves. We want to put it out there and hope somebody, sees it and, has questions that we can help out, because really for me, it's all about helping that veteran achieve whatever he's looking to achieve. It doesn't have to be buying a home. It could be federal disability retirement. It could be, clothing allowance. It could be getting a service dog. It doesn't matter what it is. We just want to let them know that this is all VA, everything VA, and reach out to us. And
I think it's great because I think, even realtors who are not veterans, they've always had this, it's like Brian Buffini, where you want people to call you and you be the resource that provides the referral, and to be able to help control the message and be able to put them in the right position so they're not out trying to find this stuff on their own. And being able to be that resource, number one, it's very noble of you to be able to want to be that resource, because it's not always regarding a transaction. And you're busy, you're running around doing things. So that's great. I love that idea. I think the more as an industry we do stuff like that and we let people know that we're here to help, whether it's veterans or anybody, I think the more impact we can have. Because right now, it's, our business is changing. It's, the easy transactions are somewhat over, where, when you go on a listing presentation, it's not as easy as, hey, we're just going to list a house and then you're going to buy a house. It's like, you got to think about, well, are we going to be contingent? There's not a house that I want to buy. I have a 3% interest rate. Like, the conversations are totally different. Yeah. What's the biggest challenge right now? Not just for veterans, but is it affordability? Is it interest rates, or just kind of a little bit of everything? Is there still kind of fear of, what's going to happen in the future, job market? Is it a little bit all the above?
It is, especially with, all that's going on with DOGE and what have you. Most of my people are veterans or federal employees of some sort. And, that it is a lot of fear going on right now, because a lot of them work from home. They've been working from home prior to COVID. It's affordability, it's the interest rates, people still bringing up that 2% interest rate. It's like, and, the only people that are really bringing that up are people that, didn't buy, in 2022, 2023, that is. It's a little bit of everything, honestly. Yeah.
And on the investor side, is that landscape getting any better for investors? Are you seeing more opportunity kind of hit the market?
In this area, I would say so. We look everywhere. We're actually starting to look at military bases, because you can find cheap houses. Fort Benning, Georgia is one that we're looking at. But in this area, I don't think prices went too high in this area. So we kind of... You definitely can find things, especially what we're looking for.
Would you see most of the strategies right now more on flipping, or do you see more hold and rent, or is it just depends on the scenario and the area?
It depends on if they're looking to build lifelong wealth or they're looking to build capital.
Yeah.
But a lot of it's flipping. We're looking for a lot of the investors I work with are looking for homes that need renovations.
Yeah.
Buy it
now,
cheap.
Is it a lot of baby boomers that have held on to their home for a while, didn't downsize, life event happens, they need to sell, they haven't done upkeep, or is it truly your typical foreclosure type property? Like what is the biggest opportunity that they're looking for right now?
Well, I mean, I don't know if I can say this, but the granny special,
Yeah.
Somebody that's bought a home, lived in there for 40 years,
Never done anything.
Never done any updates.
I think there's a lot more of those homes on the market that have not hit.
Yeah.
That
Absolutely.
are, because baby boomers, first of all, it's very expensive to downsize. If, I have a couple friends and, their parents in senior living, and it's crazy. So a lot of seniors are aging in place. They own the home free and clear.
Correct.
They don't want to take on something else, and they're deciding to age in place. But then a life event happens. Whereas before, those were all people that were turning the market. Like those, downsizing was something, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that was a big part of the market. It's not right now. The average tenure in a home right now is 11 years. Just before COVID, that was like 4 to 7 years. Yeah. So you can see these people kind of, staying in the home much longer. And I think those homes are going to eventually start to hit the market. I don't think it's going to have a dent in our inventory crisis, but I think it'll be helpful. But I'd be interested to see if the investors, because unfortunately, the last thing that a lot of the buyers need right now is investors to come back in the market, because those are a lot of homes. But one of the things I'm curious on it is, I just talked about this in one of my YouTube videos is, one of the reasons why average first-time home buyer age is 38 is because a lot of these younger generation are renting, and these high-end apartments, they're nice. They have granite countertops, all these amenities, the rooftop pool and, activities and workout centers. And then you take them to a granny special and you're like, hey, you can live here or you can live here. Where do you think, that's why they just, I feel like, to me, that's where a lot of young first-time homebuyers are struggling to buy that fixer-upper.
No, I absolutely agree. And, back in the day, I guess people would live in one spot. They would have one job. And now, I mean, every 2 years, people are moving across the country.
Oh, yeah, it's crazy.
So that's what's holding a lot of, young people back of making purchases right now. Just, I may move in 6 months. I may move in a year.
Do you see that changing at all, or any catalyst to get that moving?
Well, that's what I'm hoping to provide with Vet Home Collective. Yeah, nobody's saying you have to live there forever. Buy that property, buy that multi-unit, live in one, rent out the other one. When your family starts growing, when you have that kid, then now you have an investment property. Go out there and buy your forever home and treat this as an investment, Yeah.
We have a loan officer in our that just started with us, and he bought his first multi-unit at 20 years old. And I was like, do you know what I would wish if I would have bought?
Well, he's smart. He's smart.
I know. Yeah. I go, do you know what I was doing at 20 years old? Like, I wasn't thinking about buying multi-units. So, yeah.
Well, I like to tell my people two stories, two brothers, me and my brother. Everywhere he went to the military young as well, too. Everywhere he went, he bought a house. He might have lived there for 1 or 2 years, and he would turn it into a rental, and he would move somewhere else. Yeah. I rented. Till I was 30 years old, I rented until I moved to Miami in 2013. That's my first house I bought. And now my brother has all these properties with all these equities, and inflation's did its thing on all of them. I don't want to put a number out there, but his bank account's definitely bigger than mine for sure.
That's all through building through equity. And that's what you can bring, the education you can bring and the stories you can tell. And, I think that's the greatest thing is if you can get some of these people you've helped to kind of share their stories. Because we always in our industry, we always post about the end result.
Yes.
Like, just listed, just sold, or this great mortgage program. But behind all that are some amazing stories. I just talked to a client today, and I didn't realize, we just closed today, and he told me the motivation for him buying, and I was like blown away. I was like, oh my God, this is like such a great
what was
story.
That motivation?
Well, I mean, he lost his wife, he's got a handicapped daughter, amazing. Like, this is like such a life-changing event for him. For me, that's what we do. And I think that gets lost in a lot of what we do. And to be able to help people achieve that and build wealth while we're helping them through some of the more difficult times, I think is more impactful. I always say, and I always talk about it on here, but like in Christmas time, I always think about it is like all the families that are in homes because of all the work that we've done. It humbles you a little bit because we lose sight of it. We get caught up in our day-to-day and, you're dealing with your own personal stuff, and then you're helping all these through a stressful time. But like at the end of the day, like what we do is really impactful, especially for veterans. And 1 out of 3 veterans to not know that they qualify for VA benefits is something that and that's been the stat for a very long time. That's something that we have to change. And I think, with your help and others and, all these different organizations, I think there's going to be a lot of work that can be done.
I hope so. I hope so, because the earlier you start, the better off. I mean, the one client I have, he's on like his 8th house, but literally he does not have to work again for the rest of his life. And he's only like 45 years old. He can pass on the equity in his properties to his kids and leave a legacy. And that's, if you start, the younger you start, the easier it is, especially with inflation doing its thing.
So do you do anything different, like with buyer consultations or listing presentations on your veteran clients than you do normal clients? Or are you you have a process, this is the way that you follow, and you kind of treat it the same?
Yeah, I tend to just treat everything the same for the most part. I mean, we do have different conversations if they're a veteran, but I'm all about building wealth. The first question I ask anybody before they sell their house is, do you have to sell?
Yeah.
I mean, is there a possibility that you could just put a tenant in here and at least give them the options, you know, because I understand at this point, that the long-term hold is where it's at.
Again, I think I don't want to gloss over that, because most realtors would not do that because they're thinking, I want to list this because that's how I get paid. But for you to talk through building wealth, that is, I think, I always say, some of the best clients I have that refer me the most business, I've never done a loan for them. Never. Yeah. Like I still have one veteran. He's an older gentleman. I've known him for like 15 years and never purchased. Okay. But I talk to him probably once a year, and he refers me about 4 to 5 deals a year. I've done his daughters, I've done his sons. And I joke about it all the time. Like, when are we gonna? When are you gonna? Yeah. Like, but I'm just saying, like, when you do the right thing to people, they will always, because unfortunately not everyone does that. So it's when you can advise someone like, hey, maybe just think about renting this out. That's doing what's in the best interest of the client, and can completely. I had a client not too long ago that sold his rental property to pay for his kids' college, because he didn't want to take out student loans. And he had a rental property, his first property that he, lived in before he got married, and he kept it this whole time. It was in the city, and he was like, it's finally time to sell it. And he basically said, here you go, college is paid for. And
I would have had a conversation. I was like, hey, you could take a HELOC out on that property. You could pay for that and still keep the house.
He just wanted to not think about it. He even, we talked a little about it, and for him, it was just a peace of mind to know, like, my kid's college is paid for, and I don't need to think about it.
Well, ultimately, this, every parent, that's what, all we want to do is just make our lives better for our kids. And, a good way to do that is, to have a home that you're pouring into, you have that equity. Because, if I do the math all the time for people I work with. It's like, you rented 20 years. Let's do the math. At $2,000 a month times 12 times 20, that number is like $1 million.
Oh, yeah,
it's
crazy.
Like, I literally paid that much, and you'll pay that much more if you continue this.
Yeah. It's something that we always say. And it sounds like a. And
maybe it's not $1 million. My math is
it's fine. Off. But it's what we always say is kind of like, you're either going to pay your own mortgage, you're going to pay someone else's. Yeah. Like, that's a thing that we all say and everyone says, and it sounds like a sales pitch, but it's the reality. Yeah. Like,
well, what I say a lot too is like, well, percentages, whatever, 7%. I'm like, yeah, but you're paying 100% right now to your landlord.
Yeah. Well, I always get like, when clients will call me and they're like, I want to buy an investment property, and I'm just going to get a tenant in there. They're not getting a tenant in there because they want to, they want to get a tenant in there to pay the mortgage. Yeah. And all they care about is to try to wash that out. If they can, then it's just going to grow wealth for them over the time. And I have clients that have, I have a couple of clients that have more than 20 properties, and they could probably pay cash for them, but in their mind, they get a small mortgage, and they have this plan of what they want to do. So they have enough freed up cash, and like they have a plan, and they're both going to retire in their early 50s, and if you wait till 38, you can't make up that time to the time you're early 50s. Like, I think that's where the education piece comes in. I think a lot of younger people are going to start buying before I think there's going to be a shift, because I think a lot of the 25 to 35-year-olds, they have an idea of the housing market because of 2008. Maybe their parents experienced, they lost a house, short sale, and the kids and the parents have had that experience. So it's tough. I think once we get past that, I think there's going to be a younger generation that will start buying a little bit sooner, which I hope. Yeah. Because rent is, it's a crisis. And then if they're not saving for retirement on top of it and not building wealth through real estate, now you got a retirement crisis. And that's always my concern. So the other thing I wanted to touch on is if you don't have enough on your plate, okay? Obviously you're, realtor, all the help you do with veterans, you're a dad. So how many kids do you have?
I got two, 20-year-old and a 14 going on 30.
Okay, of course. So that takes on, a whole nother responsibility. But then on top of that, you coach wrestling.
Yeah. That's
so what made you decide to do that? And I love you're so great with your posts. You seem so proud of these kids. It's like a passion for you. So how did that come about, and what is that? How did that all come together?
Well, I coach softball. I've always coached my daughter's softball team travel, Darien Knockouts. And one day I was watching her game at Eisenhower, and the principal was kind of talking to me, and he was like, we're having a hard time finding a coach. And, if we can't find one, we're going to have to send our kids somewhere else.
Yeah.
And my kid wrestled there, and the confidence that wrestling gave him, it did so much for him. I couldn't see them not having a program over there, and I kind of threw it out there. I was like, hey, well, if you can't find somebody, let me know, because I won't let that happen. And about 6 months later, I get a call. He's like, wrestling starts in 2 weeks. Are you ready? I'm like, I was like, oh, you didn't find nobody?
Yeah.
But I do love the sport. I mean, to me, there's no other sport closer to life than wrestling. I mean, life, you're out there by yourself.
Yeah.
That, you can't blame the quarterback. You can't blame somebody from doing this. It's just you and your opponent out there. And what these kids don't know, their biggest opponent is them.
Yeah.
Their mindset is their biggest opponent. The kid in front of you is just the kid in front of you. If you believe you're going to win, if you believe you're going to lose, you're probably right. I tell them all the time. So if they start looking at brackets, or they start talking about he's a state qualifier, it's like, you already lost. You know? Just go out there. He's never wrestled you before. But I just love the sport. I love the confidence it gives the kids. I think it's one of the best sports that sets them up for life, because it's
all
hard.
Those principles that I always use sports analogies. To me, that's like with my team, whenever we sit down, we always use sports analogies. It's those lessons that those kids are learning right now are stuff that they can take with them. They'll take more from wrestling with you a couple hours a day than they will from the 6-7 hours that they spend in the classroom. Like that time with sports and, mindset, and what they learn, and losing, because so much of nowadays, as a younger generation, we don't really allow kids to lose or fail or what that. So
I call learning, you either win or you learn, and you don't learn anything winning. You learn who you are, you learn what you're about, in the L's.
I love that. And because one of the things, I'm so glad you said that, because one of the things I always say to my team is, you can never judge us when you have like one of those 10-day like clear to close, and everything goes perfect, and everyone's posting on social media and like, we're great. Like that's the easy part.
Join us.
Yeah, that's the easy part. It's how you deal with when someone screws up, or you have an issue and you got to call the customer, you got to call the realtor, you got to call the attorney. It's how you handle that. The losses and the challenges determine really who you are, and that's what you're teaching those kids. And that's something that, unfortunately, a lot of kids don't learn later on. And that's why you don't see a lot of people being able to handle later on in life, because they never really experienced that as when they were younger.
Yeah, I agree. If you get told yes your whole life, and, get patted on the back for everything you do, you don't get to learn anything about yourself. But I don't do that when I'm out on the mat.
So what do you, what's your biggest takeaway from doing that with the kids that you can apply to what you do, during the day? Is there anything that because I know, just when I brought it up to you, you instantly kind of lit up a little bit. So it seems like you take a lot away from that. Did you expect that when you got into it?
Not quite. It was always my, the passion I have behind it, watching my son wrestle, was always this, but now I got 35 kids,
Yeah.
So, I don't know what I take out of it, really just educating the young kids, I'm hard on them. Don't get me wrong. If you talk to any one of them,
it's good though.
Yeah, they'll say you're pretty hard, but you're fun.
Yeah.
Because I try to make it fun. I'm hard when I have to. I just enjoy it. I do it. I'm a giver when it comes down to it. That's why I do a lot of that fills my cup, just helping people out. And, I just get to help them. It is a lot though. It's like every day,
I think we all need something though outside of real estate that gives us that, to use your phrase, fill the cup.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes when we're too much into real estate or, whatever we do during the day, it doesn't allow us to kind of be better for the people that we're working with. And I think sometimes doing these things outside, as much as it's a time commitment, and I'm sure there's times you're going there and you're like, oh God, if I would have I could go do this, or I could help this person. Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, I know, like inside, but I also know that sometimes when we have these outlets and we have these things that we work on, it can completely transform your business and allow you to get in a different headspace that allows you to, vet home collective and come up with new ideas and, Donnie land as your wife calls it. So like, that's I think the best thing to take away from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And as much I put on these boys and girls, maintaining weight, keeping their grades up, just being disciplined kids, I challenge myself. You see me at the gym, I'm telling this kid, like, you're 100 pounds. You got to be 102 pounds, or vice versa, 105 be 102. But it kind of challenges me. It motivates me as well, too, because if I'm holding them accountable, I have to hold myself accountable. So I do it, a little bit for that, too, because, I got one guy, and he needs to lose like 30 pounds. He's 275, and, he's only in 6th grade. But when I go home, I'm like, well, I'm telling him to eat better, too. I got to do this, too. I can't be a hypocrite about it. So,
So you have a lot going on. You're doing Vet Home Collective. You're a dad, okay? You're running a real estate business. So all this is going on. Do you have a specific, I know we see each other at the gym, but do you have a specific morning routine or something you try to follow, or is there like kind of a method to your day of how you try to do it? And the reason I ask that is like, it's always the most fascinating thing for me is how people structure their day, because I feel like successful people have a plan and they kind of play it out. So what does your typical day look like?
Wake up at 4:30 in the gym right when they open the door at 5. I like to get 2 hours in, by 7, come home, take my daughter to school, have my little morning time with her. After that, I go into work for 3 to 4 hours, just do what I got to do for Vet Home Collective for my clients. And then the afternoons are the kids. I go to wrestling at 2:30. I'm out of there at 5, and then just family time after that. Unless I got any other
That's
work.
Great. I think that's one of the biggest takeaways. Is like I think a lot of people lose sight of how structured your day needs to be. Getting up at 4:30. Now you're in the military, so you're used to or have somewhat of a. Have you always been a morning person?
No.
Okay.
Absolutely not. But I realized if I don't get it done, it affects my family if I do it at 8 o'clock at night. It affects them if I do it at 7, whatever. But nobody's awake at 4 o'clock. So really that's my time. That's for me to get up there and do what I got to do. And I don't enjoy it. Don't get me wrong.
I know. Believe me, I know.
But I always feel so much better after I'm walking out of the gym.
I think it's a mindset thing too. Obviously I love, whether I do, at home or in the gym. For me, it's mindset. To me, it's getting up before everyone else is, having that time. There's no phone, there's no emails. I'm not getting, calls. I'm not getting bothered. No one needs a call back, so it's that time. And I love when it's dark out and I'm doing something.
Sure time,
like I think that's a mindset, and it gets you in the right state of mind. And I notice when I come in, I have a notes section in my phone, and I just, Eric Land, I'm like writing all this stuff down when I'm on the treadmill or doing whatever. Like I come up with some of my best ideas that if I was sleeping, I wouldn't be coming up with. And I go back to those notes all the time. And I'll just go and I'll be like, sometimes I'm looking, I'm like, what the heck did I do? But most of the time I'm like, okay. And then that's when I need inspiration. I need but that all comes from the mindset of getting up early, doing those things. And it's just, I think it's what separates you from a lot of people is, that discipline of doing that, because it is hard. So one of the things we always, end with, and I always go through, and we'll have a little fun, is, you got to have a little fun with this, but is there anything that you would be doing, okay, if money wasn't an object? What would be the perfect career job for Donnie that doesn't have anything to do with real estate?
I'd probably be, oddly enough, I went to school to be an elementary school teacher.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my degree, be an elementary school teacher.
So does the wrestling coach kind of give you that?
I think it does. Yeah. Because kids are honest, kids are honest to tell you exactly how they feel. And I do appreciate that about them. But probably teaching. That's one thing I thought I always was gonna do, because I was a work study with the VA, and when I graduated, I remember I came up to wherever I was a work study at the VA hospital in Fort Myers, Florida, and I was like, hey, I got a job. My last day will be whatever day, you know, and they asked me how much they offering you or how much they paying you. I said 17,000.
Yeah.
And they said, we'll give you 33 to keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I stayed in the VA at that point.
Yeah.
And I just, sometimes I regret, you know, I mean, we talked about regret,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
it's the things you don't do.
Yeah.
And that's something I always thought I was going to do. It was always going to be that. And I never quite got to do it, but you know, I guess I find a little bit of that in coaching kids.
And something I always talk about with my team is like, you know, the best results, you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. You know, that's what I always tell. And I, you know, I mean, full disclosure, this podcast studio, no, I just recorded something on this that I'm going to be posting in the next couple of days. But, you know, I stuttered when I was in grade school. Okay. I could never speak in front of people. Okay. And one of the reasons why I wanted to do this podcast studio is because it was kind of like uncomfortable for me. I didn't want, like, I was like, and I feel like the more I run towards things that make me uncomfortable, the more success that comes out of it. So I'm wondering if, you know, is there something that kind of makes you uncomfortable that you really have tried to focus on?
I'm a little bit like you. I think it's a little bit of this, you know, getting in front, telling your story, talking to people. I do get nervous. I'm real good talking to people, and I make this joke a lot. Like I could talk about nothing all day long with everybody.
Yeah.
But the second I have like an agenda, you know, then it kind of, you know.
That's why we tried not to have an agenda today.
Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But somebody did tell me once, and you know, it's like success is behind the things you're avoiding.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it, yeah.
So, I think I joined Toastmasters. I'm trying to do other things, be a presenter at my office. I just took the ALC role at my office.
Yeah, congratulations on that.
Because I am trying to put myself out there because I realize it'll make me better at what I do.
Do you find that doing that kind of keeps you busy too, instead of having to, because, you know, kind of the fear that we always have in our businesses is like sometimes the downtime can be very productive, it can be good, but it can also be a distraction. Do you find, are you the type of person where you just want to kind of have your schedule full, be busy, and that's what creates the opportunity that kind of keeps things going?
Absolutely. Yeah. It keeps me out of my own mind. It keeps me focused on doing other things because, you know, Donnie Land's a nice place to visit, but you don't want to live there.
Yeah.
I have to keep myself busy for me to, you know, be happy.
And then like, as far as, you know, Keller Williams and, you know, the realtor landscape, do you feel like there's any changes in the industry? And we've been through a crazy year. You know, there's a lot of changes in my business. I mean, it's crazy, you know, so much disruption in both of our industries. Do you see that, you know, dying down this year? Do you see more of that continuing? Is that an opportunity for someone like yourself who, again, hasn't been in the, I feel like realtors like you that haven't been in the business that long have an opportunity over the ones who have, because a lot of the ones who have, we're all kind of tainted with the experiences that we've had in the past. Where someone like yourself, you don't have all that, you know, luggage, as they say.
We've always done it this way. Okay, we're doing it different now.
Yeah.
But, well, I've always felt this way. You know, the only thing constant in life is change.
Yeah.
So that's just something I've dealt with. You know, I mean, everything's going to change. It's always going to change.
Well, being a military family, even as a kid, you were in a different city.
Different house, different.
Anybody who hasn't done that as a child has no idea. I was talking to another.
Like every 2 years, I moved, you know, until I was like 40.
Yeah, I interviewed a realtor, and something she said to me that always stuck with me. And I didn't even think of this. Not only is that hard in going into school, but she was explaining how her mom had to find a new dentist, had to find a new doctor, had to, like all the, like, again, things that you don't even think of because you lived in somewhere your whole life. And I don't think anybody who's experienced that as a child, like, and you didn't know any better, but it was an impact to you that stuck with you. Does that kind of stick with you now? And then obviously being in the military, there's always a lot of change. Does that stick with you now and kind of where the market is and just allow you to just adapt that much quicker?
I believe it does. You know, everything's always been changing in my life, and that's something I'm just accustomed to. Even with the NAR thing that just happened with buyer commissions, you know, it's change. You know, life is it's going to change every day. You know, so just embrace it and
that's great.
Power through.
Well, I do want to say your videos that you've done on YouTube are great, like really good. I've enjoyed watching them. There's really good information there.
You and 15 other people.
Well. This is what someone said to me. I said, I only got 200 views on one of my reels. And he said, if you could get 200 people in a room, would you find that to be a great event? I said, absolutely. He's like,
if I touched one of those people,
exactly. So don't worry about, it's about consistency.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of people that will benefit from those videos. And you may all of a sudden get 100 views that you weren't expecting because someone Googles something and it shows up. The key is you just got to get it out there. And I think everything you're doing is going to have a huge impact on veterans. And, I just want to, thank you for all that you're doing to help veterans. I think I wish we had more people in the industry that were creating organizations to help veterans, because as I told you, I think our industry has so much we can learn from people like you, and just keep going, keep doing your mission. Is there anything else you want to say about Vet Home Collective that before we go?
It's a household name.
Yeah, it's going to be very soon.
And I want to thank you, because every time I reached out to you, that whatever we're doing, I think we're doing a Veteran Service Day event at the lodge over there, and I reached out to you, and you're always willing to help. If it's helping veterans, you've always been there. So
I mean, honestly, like, to me, I want to help as many veterans as someone who's not a veteran. That has always stuck with me from when we have a veteran organization as a company. And that was the one thing that he said to me, is he said, don't just say you want to help veterans, like, actually do it. And what are you doing? And it always stuck with me. I'll continue to do it. And, we're going to try to find additional ways. So I encourage you to let me know of different ways we can help, because as an organization, as a company, it's something that we're committed to.
Awesome.
Well, thank you again, Donnie. Hopefully we'll be able to do this again, and we'll have some updates on everything you've built and what's going on with Vet Home Collective. We'll put your link to your YouTube page on the video, and we'll hopefully connect soon.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.